false equivalence. There can't be any ambivalence. A logical fallacy in which two things are made out to be the same when in fact they are not. This is categorized as a fallacy of inconsistency. Democracy tends to be a fragile thing, much more fragile than most of us are comfortable admitting. Did you know that in 2011, long after the Venezuelan government had devolved into authoritarianism, that credible polls showed that a majority of Venezuelans still believed that they were in a vibrant, thriving democracy? What this means for us is that the transformation from a consolidated democracy to a fractured one is easy to miss. In reality, our democracy depends upon two things: our parties. Yikes. It is their duty to be the democratic actors that we need in order to safeguard the democracy that we hold dear to our hearts. Nowadays, few democracies die by a violent takeover or a military coup. And yet the world is in a democratic decline. If you believe in democracy, I implore you to understand that America is not immune to this spreading disease. Because if we let potential policy wins and partisanship supersede the preservation of our country, we all lose the thing that we worked so very hard to protect. But what do we have now? Complacency. Deeply concerned politicians whose actions stop at their words deeply concerned. It's deeply disturbing. I hear from members who vote 99% of the time along party lines. In reality, however, the trend of growing hyperpartisan is happening more so on one side than on the other. They supported a man who sullied, smeared, and slandered people on Twitter. During the primaries, they criticized, condemned, feared, jeered, and laughed at him. But after the primaries, that fear turned into not indifference, but acceptance, and later, support. There are outliers, but as a collective party, this linkage institution has become infatuated with nothing less than an autocrat. Meanwhile, on the other side is not perfect, and you don't have to agree with their political views, but one must admit that they're at least conducting themselves the way that they should. It's not that they, quote, play too nice, as some of their far-left critics say. It's that they are behaving the way that they're supposed to. While the other side holds up a Supreme Court seat for 25% of a presidential term. That is nothing less than contempt for the system. It is a party that has misplaced priorities, and for that reason, we are all subject to the possibility of a democratic decline. Take, for example, the state of Pennsylvania, a state that is as purple as states come. The state legislature is controlled by the GOP, who have tried tirelessly to gerrymander the state. Now, let's be clear, and this is absolutely crucial. Both sides gerrymander. We are in a state gerrymandered by the other side. However, in this state, in the case of Pennsylvania, it is interesting because when the state Supreme Court took it upon themselves to draw the lines and hire a Stanford law professor proficient in redistricting, in retaliation to the rejection of their maps, the Pennsylvania GOP decided to appeal their case to the Supreme Court and take action to impeach justices on the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court. Now, this has a few implications. For one thing, this received national attention. We had the head of our government defending political gerrymandering and supporting those who seek to alienate it. The other implication is that the party is getting bolder, willing to spend legal resources and time dragging their maps through the court and asserting their right to gerrymander when anyone with eyes can see the difference between the maps. The fact that the party looked at the Supreme Court of the United States and saw a majority of justices with a similar ideology and felt safe appealing this case just so exemplifies the dangerous drift of our democracy. In a Washington Post poll, 47% of Republican respondents said that they believed the disproven claim that the president won the popular vote, and 52% of Republican respondents said that they'd be open to the idea of the president postponing the 2020 presidential election to ensure that only American citizens were voting. That poll should terrify us, because a move like that would be straight out of the authoritarian playbook. What I implore us as Americans to consider is what we are willing to accept as ordinary. Are we willing to accept a man who has threatened to jail political opponents or reportedly attempted to fire the man who is investigating him, or has belittled the free press, or attacked the intelligence agencies, or reportedly in a room full of senators called Haiti and African nations shitholes, no, we shan't accept it. I love democracy, I love America, and I love the Constitution, but it is because I love all these things that I must reiterate my harsh criticism of it. It's fragile. Preserving it is not a given. It takes a lot of work. It takes recognizing those who seek to threaten it and an absolute rejection of that individual or group. The fact that one party has not joined the other in total unwavering opposition just shows that they are valuing short-term political gain over the long-term preservation of the system. But it's not all bleak. Not while you go out and you vote. Vote in opposition to a party that is willing to support a demagogue or an authoritarian who potentially threatens the system. Look, both sides are flawed, but one side is cracked, and the other is shattered. And the wound is self-inflicted. False equivalence.